Well, good morning and welcome back to the Money Advantage podcast. This is Rachel Marshall, and I've got Bruce Wayner and Joseph DeFazio both with me today on our team here at the Money Advantage. And today we're bringing you a conversation about really what's top of mind for most of you in the financial space and financial world, the Trump tariffs. What do they mean? What's going on? And what do I need to do about my money? And so, without much further ado, we're just going to go ahead and jump into the conversation. Bruce and Joe, thank you so much for joining me today.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's people think we this is like a situation like no other. And what's interesting, that's what they said last time, and that's what they said the time before that. That's what they're going to say 3 and 4 decades from now. So I think that's part of the theme of today is to talk about the what we believe should be your reaction to this, or your thinking about why you think the way you think about this, and why are you feeling this way. So we're looking forward to this, Rachel.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I think what's really interesting, just as anyone in the world today, you're trying to make decisions about your finances. You are in a position of figuring out what to do with savings, with investments, with considering the economy at large. And I think there's all of these things. There's gross domestic product, and there's, the national deficit, and we've got imbalance of trade or global trade. We've got imports and exports. We've got all of these things going on around us that do affect us on a great scale. And yet sometimes I think we try to make decisions based on the after effects of something, or think that something caused something. And so it can be really easy to say, oh, Trump put tariffs in place. The tariffs caused the, crash of the stock market, and everything is going crazy, and I'm out of financial control. There's really a lot more to the story. And so today we're going to talk about what we know, what we don't know. And there's obviously a lot of opinions and speculation around this, and there's a lot of reasons why decisions are made. It's not, just to cause chaos. And sometimes I think that we can also have a short-term effect of something that might not actually be the big picture. And so really we want to zoom out from this whole what some people might be saying is a crisis right now, and zoom out and look at the big picture, and ultimately help you to make decisions in your financial life about the things you can control so that you can be in a position of the greatest advantage. So, Bruce, I'll just let you jump in and, kind of pre-frame or set the context for what we're talking about today.
Yeah, I think the big thing for today that we want to discuss is that we don't have all the answers, we don't have all the information, and that's the same position I believe everybody should take when they're trying to evaluate this, so that that's the best way that they can control their emotions and say to themselves, well, I cannot control this because I'm not involved with the government. I'm not involved with the social media uh, in ways that I'm actually determining who's lying and who's exaggerating and who's actually telling the truth. Because when
Yeah.
you get all out of all that control, then you start feeling this angst and emotional stuff that it really is counterproductive for you to be successful in whatever means that means to you, and family, emotional success, or what financial success. And so we'd like to bring a little bit of education here this morning. We'd like to bring a little bit of context, and then hopefully that will help you feel better about what is happening right now, because it's the same thing. Yeah, I can't believe COVID was 5 years, um, last month. And at the time, everybody just thought, well, life has changed and we're never going back, and the economy is going to be bad. And look, we can't even get prices, or we can't even get goods and services. And guess what? We're back, and I wouldn't say we're back to normal, but we're in some respects we're better than we were before. So let's just think about that as we talk through this podcast, that we need to just everybody relax because of the lack of control. Now we're going to get you more control by getting you more information and education.
Awesome. I love that position. And Bruce, just to your point, when is the last time that fear made good decisions? So we can just. So, Joe, anything that you kind of want to share before we kind of dive into the educational component of this?
I kind of want to take a step back and apply this to Nelson's work and just say we're going to contrast or compare and contrast here. Right now, most people are along for the ride. You're in the system, and the system has certain ebbs and flows. Business cycles comes to mind. Things like this happen, changes in policies happen. You're kind of along for the ride. The option that all of us have that Nelson found was we can step outside of that system. And one of the benefits is when you have certainty, when you're on solid ground, when you have unrestricted access to capital, as this ebbs and flows, you can now act opportunistically. So an example might be right now, if you're looking at the stock market, it's down 25%. If you have no certainty in your life, that seems threatening. If you have a lot of certainty in your life, that's an opportunity. And I'm not encouraging anyone to go buy right now. I'm just showing you your lens, your perspective changes when you have certainty in your corner, when you're standing on rock instead of sand. And just like Bruce said, just like Rachel said, we're going to dive into like what is a tariff? What does that mean? What does that historically do from an academic, a Keynesian perspective, and maybe an Austrian perspective? What does that mean from an equilibrium standpoint? What does it mean to your pocketbook and your wallet when you get to the store? And hopefully you find some clarity and peace of mind through this.
Awesome. So, without going much further from what you just said, Joe, and I love that context, let's talk about what is a tariff. Why would there be tariffs? What is the context of imposing tariffs? This is obviously not something that is brand new to the world, and it's something that has been in effect for a long time in different contexts, and certain countries impose tariffs on others. So I'm just going to let you guys take that one. What is the actual lay of the land right now?
Well, actually, Rachel, that's a great point. These are not new. This is not an invention that President Trump and his administration came up with. Once upon a time, that's how the government funded everything, was through tariffs. There was no personal income tax. It was all tariffs. A tariff, there's a couple different types, but like the main, I guess, three would be like a fixed amount per unit, a percentage based on what's imported, and some combination, like a compound. What that all that means is the country that is imposing the tariff is saying all the other countries for their goods and services to get in our country, they have to equalize, like they have to pay a certain amount to get into the country. Um, and I guess a brief like why would anyone do that? What one reason to do that is if, for example, this is an extreme example, but let's say there's some type of unfair advantage. Like once upon a time, there was like slave labor, like labor that was way, way, way below poverty in one country. So the companies in that country have an incredible advantage because they don't have to pay their workers. So the cost of their goods are artificially depressed compared to what a fair wage or labor cost of labor is. So when they come to market in the global scene, they're able to sell and undercut everybody else and still have a huge margin.
Meaning their goods and services are way less expensive, and everyone wants to buy those goods and services because the lower cost.
Precise, exactly. Um, if you are given a choice, pay $1 for this or pay $100 for that, everyone would say, "Well, I'm just going to pay $1. Why would I pay 100?" So the referee comes in, the person importing the goods says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. We can't control your business. We can't control your culture. We can't control your laws. but that's unfair on our terms. So we're
Hmm.
going to impose a $99 tariff. So now it's $100 or $100. And now you're judging things based on, the quality of it. Maybe do you align with those other companies? Does your belief system align with that? Maybe it's just timing and proximity. Did it get to me faster? So you start looking outside of just price. Um, so it appears as if, well, wait, you just made my $1 good cost 100. It was like, no, it was we normalized all the goods, so now you're choosing based on fair metrics, a level playing field.
Which
And
I hope I'm
oh,
not getting too far ahead, but the reason to have a level playing field then would be if you don't have a level playing field, let's say this country is able to sell at $1, this country sells at $100. Well, all of the consumers are going to want to purchase the $1 product. The problem with that in a global situation now is all of the dollars from the country that is purchasing are flowing to the country that has the lower price point. So dollars essentially then are flowing out of that economy to the other nation's economy, correct?
oh yeah.
Correct.
And
Correct.
oh, God.
I do think you have to be careful, and this may be my Kobe score coming through, but you have to be careful saying, but the problem,
Mm,
okay? So because it is true, I would reuse the word the effect. It
okay,
is true
sure.
those dollars are flowing outside to other businesses outside that country. However, what is the effect in that country? The effect of that country is they're getting goods a lot cheaper. So yes,
True. Yes.
and this is what's going on right now is yes, the person that is paying now and maybe can't keep a job because manufacturing of those producers are leaving, they can't get those good paying jobs. However, they're also not paying as much for that good. And frankly, if the good is not as much, then the service also doesn't have to charge as much to make a living. So that's the argument. That's the Austrian view or free trade view of things, is that we shouldn't have any restrictions, because when you put on restrictions, then you're going to have this back and forth, this boom and bust situation while you're trying to make it. However, as Joe was talking about, people on the other side of the fence, they're going to say, well, that's great if everybody plays by the same rules,
Mhm.
but people don't play by the same rules. And I'll just give a example here. Last 2 years, I believe this is an average, but even if it's just 1 year, it's okay. Or even if just the lowest year, it's okay. Australia sold $29 billion of beef to the United States, and the United States sold zero beef to Australia because of the amount of tariffs that they put on their beef, and we don't put the same amount on Australian beef coming into the United States. So what you would say there is that we're getting beef cheaper because of that for two reasons. Um, One is because, well, I guess well, I'm not going to go into the second reason. Let's just talk about the first reason. The first reason is that Australia does not have any increased costs as far as tariffs on their beef, so that now when the wholesaler buys it, he buys it at a lower price. And so the problem with that is now our ranchers, our cattlemen in the United States are not selling in the opposite direction to make money. And in many cases, in a lot of directions to make money. We're getting flooded by different meats across the world, United States. The results of the farmers in the United States are making money. However, once again, we're going to go back to the other thing. Guess what happens to the price of that meat? It's less. So this is a complicated situation, and people have to realize that the ranchers love these reciprocals. So they're talking up how great this is. As a matter of fact, I heard somebody yesterday say it's about time. One of the ranchers. We've been dealing with this for decades. Now, all of us, they were even saying things like, now all of a sudden people take a little hit on their stock portfolio, and they hate it, but we love it because we don't have any stocks.
Hmm.
The ranchers don't have any stocks. And Rachel, this is a good transition right here to help people, see the big picture. I understand you have your own personal economy. We all understand that. But right here from Business Insider, the top 10% of Americans hold 93% of the stocks. The top 10%, the highest level ever recorded. This is from January 10th, 2024. The stock market's gone up since then. So I'd say it's probably even a possibility it could be greater. Meanwhile, the bottom 50% of the Americans held just 1% of the
Wow.
stock market in the third quarter of 2023. And then as I go down further, the bottom 50% of households hold 4.8 trillion of real estate. However, they hold just 0.3 trillion, which would be 300 billion worth of stocks. The top 1% by comparison, so the bottom 50% only owns $300 billion worth of stock. The top 1% holds 16 trillion.
Wow.
So it's interesting. And once again, this is going to sound like a political statement. I'm not trying to make it a political statement, but when people say that Trump is doing these tariffs to benefit his rich friends, well, I think his rich friends are in the top 1%. Now, once again, we could talk about, real estate being the number one asset for people that are very, very wealthy. But this is not a rich versus poor situation. What I believe is that we have to find a balance somehow. And it might not completely be balanced. Like we said, maybe the United States is still paying greater tariffs, but we get slightly lower prices in the United States. So that offsets the fact, but we have to get more people, in my opinion, for the United States. And frankly, I think if we have more people in the United States wealthier, the other world gets wealthier too, because we have more money to spend in other places in the world, and we have the highest GDP by far. So all those things have to be taken in consideration. And Rachel, if you want to wrap that, and then we'll talk about other benefits that or why people use tariffs.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to this. And I just kind of in looking at what's happening with the landscape, I've heard lots of things. And I've heard on one side that as you have this really narrow, wealthy slice of people in America, you have a lot of people that are feeling more of the effects of that they're not the middle class is like under
Shrinking.
pressure. Yeah, it's shrinking
Yeah.
and it's also they're poorer. And when you look at that, you see, well, the financial markets are crashing. Does that actually equate to what the feeling of, and maybe crashing is even too harsh of a language, but we see, a dip in the financial markets. And is that necessarily impacting the general population? Is that impacting the middle class, or is that a Wall Street versus Main Street thing? And I don't even know necessarily how to unpack that fully. But let's go back to you, Joe. You wanted to share something about this.
Yeah, actually, this helps with what Bruce was just talking about. If I can share my screen real quick. This is that hopefully this shows up.
Yep.
The reciprocal line here is what Bruce is talking about, where other countries, this is a graph showing on the left axis tariffs applied by the US, and
Okay.
on the bottom, the x-axis um, applied to the US. So other countries are applying it to us. So the reciprocal line would be like if we're on the reciprocal line or very close to it, it's kind of a fair trade, like the level playing field we had just talked about. But you can see the vast majority of the world applies very large tariffs to the United States, whereas the United States applies virtually nothing to the rest of the world. So the
Yeah.
question, it begs the question, if this is so bad for the countries applying the tariff, why would the rest of the world, the entire rest of the world, apply? Sometimes, like I don't have it on here, but some countries are applying 95% tariffs to the United States, making our goods cost multiples of what they would otherwise. Why would that?
So here's an interesting thought on that. And Joe, I'd like your thoughts, and maybe even Bruce, if you guys want to weigh in on this. But okay, so if other countries are tariffing us highly, then our goods are not getting as fair of a competitive advantage in the markets of other economies, other world economies. And when you overlay the fact that America is such a consumer nation as well, I mean, we've been told, I don't even know, maybe I'm using the wrong language here, but there's so much marketing. I understand why marketing exists, but we have an environment in which we purchase very heavily and we feel that we need to purchase. And I mean, you guys can lay on any facts on this, but what I'm saying is most people are living beyond their means. Many people are in a situation where they feel the need to consume so dramatically that they're going into debt to maintain a lifestyle. And so America is a very high consumer nation comparatively to other countries, other nations. And then we have, if you look at that reciprocal line and you look at we're not exporting as much because of that, then our GDP would be less than what it would be otherwise if there was a trade balance. Can you just weigh in on any of those ideas?
So yeah, I think you're spot on. If you look at the factors of GDP, that's one of the big numbers or economic data points, macro data points. About, it fluctuates, it changes year by year. Let's say 70% of GDP is driven by purchase, by consumer purchase. And if we look at just some stats from the Fed, we know the savings rate is well below 10, 5, so on and so forth. So that means where are they getting the money to spend? Emphasizes what Rachel's saying, that it's debt. If you look at debt and consumer debt, and it's been straight up and to the right. That's how we're doing it. So we are spending beyond our means. Maybe the root problem is, why are we spending beyond our means? Like, why are our means so low we can't afford these wonderful, great products at such a low price? Well, if there's no business here, like one man's income is another man's, right? Like the expense becomes the income. So if the business isn't here able to pay employees that they can't freely spend from their labor, not the future, it puts them into a debt spiral, even though this iPhone could be $100. On the grand scale, America is not healthy from, like, if you were to judge it the same way you were to judge a company, profit and loss, balance sheet, like generally America is not in good shape.
Well, and that could be said to be true of the general population, but then also of the government itself,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah, both. Absolutely. That's a great point. Yes. I think it goes
So
back to something. Oh,
go ahead.
I think it goes back to something Bruce was hinting at, that certain economists, a certain philosophy is more hands off. Let free market take care of itself. And it kind of links the idea, like, so if you're against exports, which everyone seems to be at this moment, it's interesting that they weren't against subsidies, which is the opposite end of an export. An export is like the punishment. This is like, I'm helping you. Well, both of them are manipulating and causing these gyrations in the marketplace. But we rarely hear that anyone has a complaint on the subsidy side. It should go hand in hand. If you're in favor of tariffs, you should be in favor of, you know, subsidies, and otherwise just take it all off and let us find the actual organic equilibrium, which I don't think we know what is anymore,
No, I don't
right?
think we do because I mean, you have all these other manipulations, and all of a sudden you see this big move in tariffs, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's the cause of all of these other things. And really, there's been other underlying stuff that's manipulated the trade and not allowed it to be true free trade, which then causes imbalance, which when you think about why would an imbalance be bad? Well, if an imbalance causes a disproportionate economic um, restriction on one nation over another nation benefiting and having an economic advantage, that's not good for, I mean, even national security, right?
Yeah. Well, I
Mm.
take that. You can even take that. You can expand that to say we're talking about dollars and the price of apples at a store, but it's the same principle. If you say, if you ever see those little signs, if you go downtown wherever you're at, that says "shop local," right?
Hmm.
What that is a tariff. It's telling you put a premium on proximity.
Hmm.
Right.
It's telling you put a tariff on those other places, even though they might be cheaper. Shop local. Like an exchange rate is putting like the way the countries manipulate their currency, you're putting a tariff on currency. Interest rates, when big governments change and manipulate, like the Federal Reserve manipulates and changes things artificially, they're putting a tariff on, right, time. That's what interest rate's supposed to be, the time equalizer. So it's all over the place. The fact that, to your point, this is being done in one foul swoop, which I don't know if there's another way you could do this, but it's easy to just point at, oh my goodness, that's the reason everything's bad. It's like the cracks have been here for a very long time. He's, as far as I can tell, he's trying to repair the core of the country, bring good business, bring production, bring right value back to America, so the core of the country can rebuild. Um,
Which seems from what my research is as well, and I'm not as well versed in large economic matters as both of you are, but I mean, from what it looks like, it looks to be something that was to be able to bring business back into America, where it may be a company, it's not necessarily a foreign company, but if you could move a headquarters back into the US rather than have it overseas, then you would be around that tariff, right? You would, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but you would not be subject to that tariff if the manufacturer base was in the US.
Yes. Yes.
So then you just look at the idea that wouldn't, it seems to me that it would be better if instead of being a net importer, especially of things that are pertinent, you know, I can't remember what the names are, but lithium and all the stuff that like is necessary for technology and all of those things. If we were instead of being a net importer, if we were a net exporter, that would be good for our economic strength.
Yeah. I mean, that what you're getting at, Rachel, is why countries want to do this is not just to protect their goods inside. There's also other reasons why they may do it, and that's to protect their national interests as far as defending themselves or having the goods or the services or the resources, the natural resources, to continue to live a vibrant economy. And so there's a lot of reasons why you do these things, that are far beyond just trying to do the increase of GDP, um, or increase somebody's lifestyle. I don't care how good you're increasing somebody's lifestyle if all of a sudden one day, all the other countries say, well, we're not going to sell you anything. You're going to have to find your own lithium. You're going to have to find your own steel. You're going to have to find your own oil. then if you don't have enough, then everything's going to come crashing down anyway. So that's the part that I think people get hung up on, is there's not one magic bullet.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, those bullets have been exported in some people's minds in the form of giving other countries power in this situation. And why did we do it? Well, my cynical side says because there's corruption in the government, and they were probably curried favors, including campaign contributions, which this is why I've been saying for years we need to have term limits, because that almost doesn't eliminate it, but it minimizes it. And so, and then the other reason that you're going to get pain right now is like believing that the short-term pain is going to be better than the long-term pain of not being able to pay your debts. And that's the part that people are so addicted to rates of return. And to Joe's point at the very beginning, they're not addicted to capital.
Yeah.
To actually saving capital. They're addicted to rates of return. We hear it all the time when we're talking to people. Well, what kind of rate am I getting on this dividend? What's the rate, the borrowing rate? Oh, well, why should I put it in here when I can go and get 25% in a real estate deal? Well, that's because you're looking at the rate as being the measuring stick and not the volume of the capital that you possess. And we're finding out of this right now because the volume of the decline of the stock market is much more heavily felt than the percentage rate of it. And because people, they don't care if it went down 10%. What they care is their 401k lost $500,000. The volume, that's the part they care about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about the capital they care about. It's not about the rate, because if you have that capital, you can do something else. And I just like to bring a couple of other fundamental things in here. First of all, when you sell a stock, somebody's buying it. Okay, I don't think the general public understands this concept. So as the stock market's going down, one of the reasons it's going down is because you're saying, I don't believe in this stock anymore. And somebody else is saying, I think you're wrong. I want to buy it at this particular price because I find value in that. Now, before everybody's screaming at the podcast and saying, well, no, companies buy back stock. Yes, they do, but they don't do it in a general form like this, because that's manipulating stock prices. They will buy back stock in a buyback stock program direct, but not during a free trade situation. So in other words, if somebody puts in a sell order, they're not for Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola doesn't have somebody, says, okay, yeah, we'll buy it at that price. It goes into the general market. So that is an important thing to understand. This next thing you need to understand is about margin accounts. We are addicted, as you said, to debt, and I agree with that. That carries over into our equities market, because now what the big banks will do that have their own brokerage divisions, they will actually lend you money based upon how large your stock portfolio is. We won't get into the specifics, but they cannot lend to 100% of the stock portfolio. Why? Because people know, the banks know, this is a great collateral. So they will
can
not
lose value.
That's right. And yet, once you get past the beginning of a life insurance contract, where the fees are, not the value's still there, the capital's still there, then you can get to almost 100% of your surrender value. The only reason you can't get to total 100% of the surrender value is because there's life insurance involved, and you want to make sure that gets paid for. So there's two different types of capital that you have, and it's going to be there, The stock market is not that way, and we know that because they will not lend you your anywhere near your full amount of at any given time. So then as it goes down, the banks start saying, now you're below our qualifications. We need some more money to pay off your loan. So you got to pay down your loan. Well, if you're sitting on capital at a bank, liquid capital at a bank, you could just pay it off. But guess what? If that was the case, that's what you would have used to buy the stock in the first place. So now what you have to do is you have to sell stock. But if you don't do it, the brokerage house will do it for you by contract. They have the right to sell it by contract. So that if you don't do it, they're going to do it anyway. And by the way, they'll be happy to do it because all they're worried about, they don't have a stock portfolio, the bank. They have a portfolio of loans. So they want to protect that capital so they can do more loans. So now you go out into the open market and I gotta sell some more stock to pay this. The open market says, well, I'm gonna see how far down I'll push the price until you'll finally say yes. And guess what? As soon as you say yes and get that capital, then somebody else's margin call comes up because you forced the price down. So now their collateral went down. And so now they're like, oh, shoot, I have to sell some more of my stock. So they go back in the open market, and the open market says, oh, I lowered it last time and it worked. I'm going to do it again. And they lower it again. Well, guess what that does to person A's collateral now? It goes down further. In these market correction, it's a death spiral until the collateral finally on the margin calls come to an equilibrium. And when will it come to an equilibrium? When people perceive it as a bottom and they start wanting to buy the bottom. So money starts flowing back in. And that's when collateral from the margin accounts will stabilize. And when that stabilizes, then the price of the stocks that were having to be sold, now they don't have to be sold anymore. They will stabilize. And then we could have a market that is figuring things out. Now we're gonna buy and sell stocks based upon, I shouldn't say it all the time, but based more upon fundamentals. What is the actual P&L of this company? What is the outlook of their R&D? What is the change of this CEO going to mean to the vision of the company? So we're getting back to more fundamentals than we are emotion. So I thought that was important for people to understand how the market is not just affected by the tariffs, because that's why people are selling right now, is because they think the tariffs are going to be an additional cost. And then that means that companies are not going to be making as much money because some of these tariffs, even if they're assembling in the United States, they're bringing parts in. It is a very complicated system.
So to that point about assuming that the tariffs are going to cause those problems, can you guys speak to, I think there's the question of who's going to bear the cost of the tariff. And I think the question is, there's people saying, if we put tariffs on China and we buy Chinese goods, then that cost is ultimately just going to come over to the American consumer. Goods are going to be more expensive, and we're going to see just an inflation. I don't know if the inflation is the right word, but an increase in cost, meaning we have to pay more for goods and services. So I think you see things on that side, but then I also see that with our nation being running a not trade deficit, but a national deficit and debt the way that we are, if you're in a position where the only way to recover from that is additional income, and you can look at the government gaining income through either taxation or other means, well, they can tax the American population, or maybe they can gather or garner some income to correct this debt situation through tariffs, which then would mean those other countries who are being tariffed are the ones who are providing that income into the US Treasury, I guess that would be, and relieving some of the debt. Can you just speak to that?
Yeah, I think so. One thing to remember is, for how long? So this idea that the tariffs crushed the economy, and for how long though? I think that's why President Trump said, please be patient. Uh, Economics needs to work itself out. Bruce was just talking about the downward spiral and finding a collateral equilibrium where the value is a true value, and then you can start to rebuild. Well, it's something similar where perhaps it's not the worst thing in the world to reset like a broken bone, right? The economy has been fractured for a long time. And what's happening is all the excess, all the zombie companies, all like this would squash a lot of that. Directly to what you're saying, Rachel, if you're buying Chinese goods, yes, the price of Chinese goods are now translated to the price of United States goods. So they would feel more expensive. The influence of that is, do I need to buy Chinese goods then? The influence is, instead, I'm going to go to Bruce's shop and I'm buying Bruce's goods because there's no tariff, it's the same price. I can get it in 2 days. I know he's a good guy, runs a great shop, and it's a quality product. Why would I now go look to China if the only benefit was that absurd price differential? So it helps you recalibrate where, like to your point, money is like Nelson's work. It's all about cash flow and where the flow is going. This helps the flow stay in America. Right? The cash flow is staying within America, unless there's a really, really, really compelling reason to go outside of America. Instead of just artificially depressed prices. Um,
And then you
yes,
could even say to that, and I don't mean to take you a whole different direction, but then if American dollars stay in America, then I mean, is that the end of the world if we had more, I guess, closed systems rather than such an open system where all the world is money's flowing all over from country to country? Is it
well,
necessarily a problem?
well, you got to the end before I wanted to explain. So really, what we're talking about is: would you rather implement IBC or exist in a closed financial system, or would you rather? Is it more beneficial to be in this open? You're at the whim of the system way of life. Personally, I think the closed system. There's so many benefits to that. It's incredible. Um, but yes, to your point, is it the end of the world if we have a really strong United States economy that self-perpetuates and does not need anything external, but can choose to go external if they want? I don't think there's a problem with that. Um,
Yeah. I
right.
think
So
it's
I
Well,
really interesting. Oh, go ahead, Bruce.
well, I think this is the part that why you do tariffs, and I'm not saying I'm for it or against it, but the Trump administration believes that if he tries to keep all the goods and services, the GDP, in other words, in the United States, then the other companies that were feeding from all the
Oh, Bruce, you just muted.
you cut out.
so
Okay, so
I
all the other countries that
actually
were,
yeah, so that all the other countries are now going to say, hey, we need that American dollar to flow towards us. So we're going to take the tariffs off. And that's where you get to the negotiating type part of it.
yes, which you see already in effect with, what was it, Vietnam was a key
Yeah,
player in that.
yeah, there's been reports that several of them, including the British Prime Minister, was saying he understands, and we're going to talk about this. And people say, and Joe, I think you brought this up earlier. People say, well, if it's so bad for the United States, then why are all the other countries doing it? Wouldn't it be bad for them? And I would say that that's a great point, and I think we all see the ridiculousness of that statement, and Joe intended it to be ridiculous so that people would think about it. But the fact of the matter is that um, when you are trying to get your point across, it's not only just the GDP, it also could be other things you want in the world, political influence, military influence, where you're staging your military, where you're going to get more political allies across the United States, across the globe. So there's a variety of things you're doing for tariffs, not just for increased revenue for the United States or increased production from the United States. So it's a very complicated thing. As I started this podcast out, I would tend to lean on the more the libertarian side of total free market, but then you have to add a but that's not what the rest of the world is doing. And why we've put up with it so long is the same reason why Americans get in trouble in their household by taking debt, because it's not a problem as long as their cash flow can pay the debt. As long as whatever you're bringing in is enough to pay the debt is fine. But then the next month, oh, I got to take out a credit card loan to pay this. Oh, I have to take out another credit card loan to pay this. Oh, I have to use my credit card just to pay my internet bill this week. And so all of a sudden, a person says, oh my God, if this continues, I'm going to have to file for bankruptcy. Well, now that we're actually running almost a $2 trillion deficit a year, there's going to be a time where we cannot pay our debts. Why? Because we are not going to be able to offer bonds to other places or our own people, because they're not going to buy it unless it's really, really high. And there we get into a spiral again, because the only way people are going to buy if it's really high. And if it's really high, then we have to add to the debt. And there's going to be a time when people say, enough is enough. I am pulling back. I'm just going to try to survive on my own.
And always that
And
pullback is going to hurt at the time that you start it. I mean, it's never going to feel comfortable to rip off the Band-Aid or reset a broken bone, Joe, as you mentioned earlier. Bruce, go ahead and finish your point. I wasn't trying to end you there.
No, I was just saying that, I was wrapping up to the fact of the matter is that the tariffs, I believe, is the first step to try to say we are in that we better do something mode. We're at the point of no return. And so this might not work, but it's better than doing nothing, because we know the results of the other, becoming insolvent. I mean, if you don't admit it, then you just got your head in the sand, and you're hoping that if I don't pay attention to it, it'll go away. And how do I know that, Joe? I know you have investment clients. I have investment clients right now. I know because they've told me on their reviews, they bring in their statements that are still in the envelopes, because they don't want to know what's going on with their investments. And so it's the same thing with this debt. Oh, I don't want to even think about it. It'll go away. It's a pure human reaction.
Well, I mean, to your point, Bruce, if you are in a position where you're using future dollars to pay for debt, that's bad enough. But when you're using debt to pay for debt, I mean, that's in a really bad situation.
Well,
So
we've been doing it for a long time.
go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just going to say that the two things real quick. If you go back to I'll start with this one. If you take Bruce's idea and take it to its extreme, it's your income, your cash inflows, whatever source, goes to eventually all debt service. Right? If you let that keep playing out, it will all go to debt service, meaning you can't own anything.
Which
You're in
means,
it.
let's just put this in like 100% layman's terms. That means I make $5,000 in January, and all $5,000 is already required as a fixed payment to all of your finance companies, the credit card, the furniture loans, the car companies, your student loans, all of that $5,000 is required fixed payments, and you have nothing left.
Perfect. Thank you. The implication of that is you can never have capital. You can never have economic value because you're now forced to give all of your cash flow away to these other companies to service consumption you did probably years ago.
And the
Right? And
starting point for that was the desire and the voracious appetite, the addiction
mhm,
to consumption.
yes. The second thing is to Bruce's point, like if you're watching all this unfold and it's like if you are implementing IBC, you are not panicking. Like the client that comes in and doesn't want to look, it's the exact opposite when you're implementing IBC. It's like, oh, how large, how much did it increase? What can we do now? You're sitting on a contractually ever increasing pile of capital you have control over that now you're well, if you wait a little bit, you're going to be sitting here saying, which opportunity do I want? I choose you. I'm going to take that. I'll buy that business and that one over there because those two are healthy. Um, it puts you at ease, and you're almost this is a you're kind of looking forward to this business cycle because that's where all the opportunities are. I think Warren Buffett said it once. You know, when everyone else is greedy, be fearful. And when
Right.
everyone else is fearful, be greedy. And it's when there's blood in the streets, it's time to buy. If you have, ironically, banks shut down their credit, they constrict their credit. Your interest rate goes to 1 billion because you can't get any credit to buy in that moment. Like
Which is
if you
all the
put
more reason that you need your own capital.
you need your own capital, but yet circle back if you're constantly consuming and constantly getting in debt to consume, your ability to accumulate capital in any form, assets, you know, or cash or any form is going down and down and down and down because all of your money is flowing away from you.
You know what's so interesting about this is I think I rode horses growing up, and they teach you when you're riding that you put your eyes where you want the horse to go, which sounds like, okay, well, that's just woo-woo. I'm going to put my eyes on that tree over there, and my horse is going to end up at the tree. But the result is my eyes lead, my body leads, the horse understands what I'm doing, and everything goes towards that tree. And I think the challenge here is that not nobody. I shouldn't say nobody. The general population is not awake to what their eyes are looking at. And the eyes, if our eyes are looking at, I need to have more, I need more home, more bigger property, nicer things, more name brand, more like if that is the thing, if we are not recognizing that we're literally being led by marketing messages and that they get into our psyche and we think it's our own thoughts that we're thinking, but really we're being led by everyone else's consumption or messages that cause us to put ourselves in a position of consumption. If that is what we're being led by, then we find ourselves in this really negative spiral situation and out of control. If our eyes are instead led to the prize over here being as much capital in my control as possible, then we are no longer addicted to consumption and addicted to debt because we're not a slave to that. We are instead addicted to and a slave to the thing that gives us life, this desire for building and having capital. And for anyone who's listening this far, if you potentially are engaged in this conversation and you like what we're talking about, but you have no idea what IBC is, let me just give you a tiny little 2-second primer. IBC is a concept of being able to store capital and be in a position where you store capital rather than depleting capital over here because of your eyes being set on the consumption. Over here, you're set on how can I save and control as much as possible? I'm going to store capital, I'm going to build reserves. And as I focus on building reserves, now I have the means to be able to self-finance or to use that capital for emergencies, for opportunities, and I am in a position where my capital can continue to grow and I can use that to finance other things, meaning I can borrow against that capital that is mine. And yes, I still have cost of capital, but I'm in a position where I'm continuing to earn. And so I'm reducing the cost because I'm having this growth of dividends and interest. I'm having this growth inside my pool of capital. And that's where you truly are able to have that exponential growth curve because when you have growth on something that never gets depleted, and doesn't get interrupted and you never drop it down to zero, you continue growing this pool of capital, then you can have true economic or true exponential growth. And we love to use specially designed whole life insurance as a tool or a financial tactic to be able to do that strategy best. So anything else that you guys would add to that specific concept? And then Joe, I want you to be able to end on that whole idea of how tariffs really relate to IBC that you shared.
Yeah, sure. I man, I wish there was an easy way to. It really is so simple once you understand it, IBC, but to condense it down into something that the average person starting from ground zero will understand, it's so challenging. And Nelson, it took him 10 hours to go through a seminar. Plus, all we have left is a 6.5 hour recording of that seminar and the book, the workbook that goes with the seminar, and a couple other books that support this concept. Um, it it took him 10 and he's been doing it for decades. And the smallest he could get the seminar was 10 hours. And the book, like every word in the book has so much meaning. But the first time you read it, it's like it's just gonna breeze right past you. But I would kudos, Rachel. That's a really good primer. Hopefully, it gets people curious. It's the way to change the flow of money in your life. It's the way that, like we were just, I was, I'll combine the two ideas. Tariffs are like putting a wall around the country, kind of. So everything in the country stays in a closed system and keeps working for it. It's kind of like that. It's like instead of having all the money flowing to all these external entities in your life, it's like there's a wall around it. You have this reservoir now that you have control and can use and deploy and replenish however you see fit. You're in absolute control of 99% of every decision in your financial world. It leads to just an incredible sense of peace of mind and relief when you realize your capital is required to grow. So it's insulated away from this problem of cash that is inflation. It's required to increase each year. It's insulated from taxes. It's insulated from market risk. The money in this has taken a step off the hamster wheel, and you're just observing the hamster wheel. And every time it gets to the bottom, you could say, we're going to jump back on and ride it to the top and get back off. You have an incredible amount of autonomy and control in your financial world when this is implemented properly. And yes, Rachel hit it right on the head. The concept and the process is the same and has been the same. The current best contract and product is dividend paying whole life. That's how you implement this to the highest level in your life right now in 2025 as of this recording. Could that change in the future? Maybe. It could.
However, let's just be clear, it hasn't changed.
Yeah,
It's been the best tool for the past, what, 200 years?
yeah,
So just know that we're also not on a whim saying that it could change tomorrow.
yeah. Sorry, it's not like tomorrow. Yeah, cool. Thank you. It's at some point, could there be a better version of it? Sure. Right now, right here, for the past 100 plus, 200 plus years. This contract, dividend paying whole life, participating whole life insurance from a mutual life insurance company, bar none, is the best way to implement this.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. And I just love that you had said an idea that tariffs then make America implement IBC. And I guess you can even unpack this further, but I think the idea is that if a closed system could be good for national security, then couldn't that be true on a smaller and smaller scale? And what I mean, I'm going to start from the smallest scale first. If a family was financially strong and solvent and capable and secure, and all the families in a community were the same, then wouldn't that community then be strong? And if all the communities in a state were strong, then wouldn't that state be strong? If all the states had the same kind of strength, then wouldn't the nation be strong? So if at the smallest level there's health and vitality rather than I bleeding out, then you would have strength and you would be in a position of that addiction to capital then would be putting you in a position of strength.
Oh yeah, um yeah, that's a great way to put it. Bottom up, if it starts with the person. What I was trying to say is if you zoom out, it's exactly the same thing. The tariffs are the walls that we were just talking about, where it's kind of forcing America to look in the mirror and say, hey, improve the till the ground at home, improve the economic engine at home first, and then sure, do all these other things. But you're free to do whatever you want once you're healthy. Like, and you're in the airplane, the
Mm-hmm.
oxygen mask comes down. They tell you to put yours on first before you start trying to help people.
Mm-hmm.
It's that concept where it's shake out all the noise and all the excess and all the speculation over the years and get healthy again, and then conduct yourself in international affairs. Um, but yeah, that's a great example. If you would have to argue that that's bad, you would have to argue that if the family is solvent and financially strong and makes great financial decisions, that's bad for the community. Because then the community would make strong financial good decisions, and that's bad for the state. And that's bad. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great depiction. Thank you.
Bruce, any closing thoughts here? I know we're a little bit over our hour here.
I would like to say that the couple of closing thoughts. I just want people to think about their thinking again. Why do you feel the way you feel? I think you may have been told how to feel. Number two, you still have this idea that retirement is the end goal of the game. And you've been convinced by that by decades of people that want your money and people that are selling this utopian lifestyle, whether it's travel, whether it's golf, whether it's adventures, so on and so forth. And so you're being marketed to constantly. If you were not to retire, you would not feel the same way. And a lot of people say, well, no, I just want to retire. I'm telling you, I've been doing this a long time. I have clients that have millions of dollars and they still want to work and do something. I've had clients that have retired and said, I can't take this anymore. I wanted to do something. They want to have purpose in their lives. So don't presume everybody you see that's over 65 years old at Walmart or working as a waiter or something like that are doing it because they have to. They're doing it because they want to. My dad's 85 years old. He's going to be 86 in September, and he still works 20 hours a week, physical labor. He loves it. He loves to be able to tell people that he does something. He loves to get up. He loves to interact with people.
And Bruce, you told
So
me that he was concerned that you guys were going to make him stop working, right?
he did one year. I told him, I said, Dad, well, here, I can replace this money. He goes, do I have to stop working?
I love that.
No, yeah. And I said, no, you don't have to. I'm just saying you can. Yes. And so we have been sold a bill of goods that says, well, the reason you need to worry about this is because you want to retire. Well, and the final thing I'd like to talk about is that the reason you want to retire is you don't like what you're doing. So now you have to find something that you like to do. And it doesn't have to be at the same income level. So there's a variety of things that you can do to change your mindset.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation today. I am really thankful for both of you and your insights and just the dialogue we were able to have today about this big topic in a really rational manner. And I think people are looking for answers, they're looking for direction. And I hope that if you're listening today, you realize that there is absolutely an alternative to being afraid and making panic decisions because of something, tariffs, seeming like this big deal thing that's causing the markets to rumble and not crumble, rumble, make noise. I'm just making sure that no one's thinking I'm saying this is the end of the world. So if you are in a position where you're saying, I really do want to understand how to make the best financial choices, and I want to be in a position where I'm optimizing my income and my assets and being in that position of controlling capital and having that financial stability that Joe, you were talking about. I love how you started by saying you can have the house built on the sand or the house built on the rock. And that's, directly an analogy from the Bible where yes, we need our house built on the rock of Jesus and our firm foundation in the Lord. But financially, that is completely relevant and applies that you want to be in a position where what you're standing on is not shaky. It's not a mirage. It's not a false um, propped up economic boom or it's not just thinking things are good because the stock market is high. And I think we all need to be able to have some sense and some rationality in our decision making. And so if you are in a position where you want to inquire more about infinite banking, IBC that we've been talking about, or you just really want some answers in how to respond to this personally, we invite you to come over to themoneyadvantage.com and you can book a call with our advisors. And we would be happy to talk with you about how you can be in a position of the most strength and stability through these times and all of the crises that are likely to arise through this market cycles because it's not the one and only situation that is ever going to be on the horizon where things around us seem to be shaking. So thank you for being with us today. Thank you for your questions. And as always, please remember that two things. First, you can drop comments into the chat if you have questions about this later. We would be happy to discuss this in follow-up episodes as well. And secondly, please remember success leaves clues. So model the successful few, not the crowd, and build a life and business you love.